So we're looking forward to having you here in Chico, Richard.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yep, yeah, really looking forward to listening to you and hearing what you have to say. So we'll help you get the word out here too.
Great.
So I would like to start this out with something that is always on my mind, and it's the fact that we seem to have created a financial system, a global financial system, based upon consumerism, which is totally dependent on infinite resources. And it always comes to my mind, are these people just very greedy and unintelligent? Or I can't imagine why someone would do this on purpose and not give it any thought for so many years. And still we're in denial on lots of different levels. What do you have to say with that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't deny that there are lots of greedy people around. And at the same time, economics as a discipline just grew up over the course of the last couple of hundred years, this anomalous period of cheap energy and rapid economic growth. And so economists internalized the idea that economic growth was something that could go on forever and that resources were effectively infinite. It sounds kind of crazy when you put it that simply and that directly, but in effect, that's what's still being taught at in economics classes and universities all around the world. The notion is that as a resource starts to become scarce, the price goes up. So that incentivizes both efforts toward efficiency of consumption and also the development of substitutes, alternatives. And so through the magic of the market, through the price mechanism, effectively resources are regarded as being infinite. And there were a number of mainstream economists who have put it exactly that way. You'll find books like The Bottomless Barrel about how fossil fuels are effectively infinite, and many others going back decades. So, policymakers just basically listen to these economists, and they say, well, these are economists. They're professional economists. They must know what they're talking about. And of course, it's a happy message. It's something that everybody would like to believe, that Earth has infinite resources. So the result is that not only economists, but policymakers as well have bought into this patently absurd idea, and it's become more or less accepted doctrine.
So, Richard, what in your life, what was the aha moment, the epiphany that started you really taking all of this very seriously?
Well, really the biggest aha moment was very early on, 1972. I was 21 years old and read a new book that had just come out called Limits to Growth. And this was the effort of a group of MIT scientists to use computers to model the interactions between population growth, resource depletion, and environmental impacts of industrial processes. And the book showed, the book reported on a series of scenario studies that they produced with what by our standards was a primitive computer and very simple software and so on. And in those scenarios, world economic output peaked and declined sometime in the first couple of decades of the 21st century. Now, this was alarming to most mainstream economists. They thought this couldn't be because, as we all know, economic growth can go on forever. So these people must have made some crude mistake or something. So limits to growth was pilloried by the financial press, and many people still believe that it was somehow debunked a long time ago. Actually, studies have been done in recent years to compare the standard run scenario with what's actually happened over the last 40 years, have shown that actually these guys did a very good job of modeling these input factors. But what that did was sent me on a different life path. I remember I was 21 years old when I read this, and I realized for the first time in my short life that the world was on an unsustainable path, that we could not keep going the way we were going. Now, whether the day of reckoning would be years or decades in the future, in a way, it didn't make sense, because it was like an emperor has no clothes sort of moment. And so I basically spent the rest of my life from then till now trying to understand how and why we got on this unsustainable path and what to do about it. And I think it's kind of the same experience that young people are having today when they first hear about climate change. It's that, oh crap moment when you realize that the whole world around you is based on not just a lie, but a fundamental misconception of reality that is, sending us hurtling off a cliff.
Yeah, sometimes when I stop and think about this whole scenario, it comes to me that probably the best thing to do would be a conscious dismantling of the system while we still have some infrastructure, we still have some oil reserves, we still have some resources left, because the other option is to stay in denial and keep on living day to day and drive this thing over the cliff. And then when it goes, we won't have internet, our highways will be terrible, we won't have oil. So what would we do, or what could we do, as not only as individuals but as communities, because let's face it, the government's not going to dismantle this. They're going to push it to the hilt. But in small communities, we're getting together now and realizing that we can start pulling ourselves off from the grid to some extent and start preparing. And on individual levels, like I live out, like I noticed your house, your backyard, by the way, is like really nice. But we live out also. We have a garden, we have solar, we have wind turbines, we have our own well. So we're sort of in a good situation. And I think the more we do this as individuals, the better it's going to be. But what can we do fundamentally to correct this?
Yeah, well, you said it yourself. I mean, there are things that can and should be done at the national and international level. We should be getting off of GDP as a measure of and a target of where we want to go as a society. GDP is just the total amount of money that's being spent in the economy on an annual basis, and it doesn't differentiate between growth that actually improves our prospects as a society and the integrity of the environment and so on, and economic growth that actually causes everything around us to get worse. So we need an indicator that would reflect, how happy we are as a society, the quality of our communities, the integrity of our environment, and a number of organizations have suggested indicators that would do that, like the genuine progress indicator or gross national happiness or something like that. That's just for a start. Again, there are lots of things that governments could do either cooperatively on an international basis or just on a national basis. But as you say, that's not happening so much. So in the face of that, what can we do? Well, we have to do exactly what you said: work at the household level and at the community level to build resilience in the face of the kinds of shocks that are on the way, economic shocks, environmental shocks, and build resilience in a way that improves the prospects for ourselves, our children and grandchildren, for everyone in our communities. Even as economic inequality increases for the country as a whole, we can do things on our communities that actually improve the prospects of everyone. We can make sure everyone has a place to live. We can make sure that everyone has something to eat, that that no one is left out. Now, again, that could be done at the national level in various ways, but if it's not being done at the national level, well, what can we do as communities? It turns out there's a lot.
So, so one of the things I call it's like the 7 billion elephants in the room. Nobody's really wanting to talk about the fact that we have so many people on this planet. And we recently seen what happened to Obama when he tried to force certain agencies to make contraceptives available. It's a big religious issue. How do you think we're going to handle this if we don't really consciously take control of the population?
Well, it takes a long time to turn around demographic trends. So even if we started doing everything right with regard to population today, world population would still continue to grow for many years into the future. But that's not an excuse not to do anything, because the fact is rapid population growth, large family sizes hurt poor people first and worst. That's true in this country, and it's true around the world. When a family has many children, of course there are exceptions, but in general, if it's a poor family, they're going to end up spending all of their money on food and shelter. They'll have nothing left over for education, maybe for the formation of a small business or something like that. And so people get mired in poverty generation after generation as a result of rapid population growth. So if we're serious about helping people who need the help the most, people in poor countries and people in poor communities, one of the first things we should do is provide them with family planning services and contraception. It's cheap, it's humane, and it does more to lift people out of poverty than probably anything else we could do.
I was just reading where just in the last couple of weeks, quite a few World Bank executives have resigned. They just recently arrested 4 priests at the Vatican for laundering money. More and more is coming up now. It's looking like there might be a serious intent on really bringing some of these people to justice. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
I would like to think that some of the folks who were responsible for the big Wall Street calamity of 2008 will serve time, but it's kind of not looking that way. People in power have a way of insulating themselves from the consequences of their actions. It's been that way for centuries and millennia, and it's there are exceptions to that, of course, but I think it's more important that we put our efforts into creating alternatives than in holding these people accountable. Not that we shouldn't hold them accountable, but if we just get lost in the anger and the desire for retribution, we can let that take up all of our psychic energy and our time, when we desperately need to be spending our time and efforts in building alternatives, because if we don't, then we'll be in much worse shape than we would otherwise.
When you talk about peak oil and peak food, we've definitely gone for the low-hanging fruit in all of these areas. And they have created like what you call a systemic problem. How would you explain this in the kind of a way where a 12-year-old could understand what we've done, how we've done it, and what's going on the planet right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you again did a pretty good job of laying out the problem. The way I would explain it is, when we're harvesting resources, we always harvest the low-hanging fruit first. We harvest the cheapest, easiest to access, highest quality oil, natural gas, coal, minerals, metals, you name it. And so as a result, as